I was walking back from a party one night on my own, and I had to walk down a quiet country road full of tall trees on either side, which made it even scarier. I thought I could hear some noises in the bushes, but put it down to my imagination running away with itself because of me being freaked out about walking this lonesome road in the dark. I was walking faster now, and then suddenly I heard something like a branch crack. I knew something or someone must be behind me. I stopped and looked behind, and I could see a dark figure behind a tree. I panicked, then ran down the road knowing I'd get to my street soon, and at least there would be houses and lights. When I got to my house, I was relieved to be opening the door, but something told me to look behind. Next to the streetlight was the same dark figure. I slammed the door shut and thought about ringing the police, but decided for some reason not to. The next day my neighbour rang me and said it was too late to call last night, she felt, but she saw someone outside my house last night that looked suspicious. I panicked, and as soon as I got off the phone, I checked my CCTV, expecting to see my stalker. I couldn't see anyone outside my house, no one in my living room, and no one in my kitchen. When I got to my bedroom, I froze in fear, as I could see me asleep in my bed, with the dark figure standing next to me in the room staring down at me, asleep. I rang the police right away after, and they said make sure my doors are locked and everything is secure. I never saw my stalker again after that night, but still till this day I feel so afraid walking that lonesome road, and I also open my eyes at times in bed to check to see is anyone in the room with me. It was Christmas Eve, and Carmel was very excited, looking forward to Christmas, and knew she couldn't sleep with anticipation of Santa Claus bringing her presents to her in the morning. Herself and her mom and dad were leaving a glass of milk and a carrot out for Santa and his reindeers, what they did every Christmas Eve. Then it was time for her to go to bed, her mom and dad told her. As she went to bed, she found it hard to get to sleep with excitement. She heard a noise from downstairs, and being so excited, hoping to catch a glimpse of Santa Claus, she went downstairs. And to her surprise, she saw a man at the kitchen table. She turned back slowly and crept up the stairs and went into her parents' room, nudging her mom awake. Carmel said, "Mommy, Mommy, Santa Claus is downstairs." Her mom said, "That's great, sweetie, now go back to sleep, or he might get mad and not leave your presents." Suddenly Carmel's mom heard a noise from downstairs, so she went down to investigate. Her heart pounded in her chest when she saw a black figure in her kitchen running out of the door with their turkey. Carmel couldn't understand why her mom was so afraid. The figure Carmel thought to be Santa was a thief who broke into their house on Christmas Eve. Mary was on a date with a guy she met on a dating app, which after a few minutes after meeting him, she regretted ever making the date. He was coming across very creepy, asking her all sorts of weird stuff. There was a waiter across from Mary and her date, and she could see that he spotted her discomfort. My date told me he was going to the restroom and told me he would be right back. As soon as Mary's date disappeared into the restroom, the waiter approached her table, asking her was she okay, and if she liked, he would take her home in 5 minutes, as he was getting off work then. Mary was about to say that would be great, but her date suddenly arrived back at the table. The waiter asked him was everything okay, to it not seem suspicious him talking to his date. The next morning when Mary woke up and turned on a news channel, the news reporter was talking about a woman who was murdered in a local restaurant. They then showed a picture of the killer, who was the waiter who offered her a ride home. Mary froze, knowing that she would have been killed like the girl if she had accepted the spin home. My name is Jack, and I was reading a book after a long day in school when I saw a black cat enter the living room. We had no cats, so I was wondering how it got in. My parents were out, so I decided to feed it and asked him what was his name. The cat said, "Meow." The cat was lapping up the milk, then licked his lips. I decided to ask my parents when they came home, can I keep the cat? Suddenly I heard someone say, "Here, kitty." I looked around and saw a little girl in the corner of the room. I jumped and screamed, and with that, the girl and cat disappeared. When my parents came home, I explained everything to them, but they seemed to have just dismissed it. That night, I heard arguing in my parents' bedroom. I heard my mom say to my dad he should have never have bought this house, knowing there was a little girl killed just outside the door. I burst in the door asking what little girl was killed there. Then they explained to me that years ago a little girl was trying to catch a cat from crossing the road, but got ran over and killed. I felt sorry for the little girl, but also felt very afraid that the little girl I saw today in the living room was no doubt the ghost of that girl, and to make it more creepy, that was her cat. Me and my wife were so happy for so many years. We had so much fun and enjoyed life to the full. But then things started getting bad when she started having hallucinations. And as they escalated, I couldn't take it anymore. We both finally agreed she would seek help. She visited a psychologist, but it did no help. She used to argue with me about the littlest things. When we finally got to bed, it wasn't lovemaking we would do. She would just turn her back on me and sob and cry and sob and cry all night. Eventually she moved into the room next door. I could still hear her cry all night, A few months later, I couldn't take it anymore. I put on my jacket and got into my car with a shovel and drove to the cemetery. I got out and walked into the cemetery and started digging. I could hear her cries over and over while I was digging. When I reached the coffin, the cries got louder and louder. I screamed and shouted, "Stop crying," as I opened the coffin. And there she was, crying inside. Even in death, she wouldn't stop crying. She drove me to this. I knew it. But that didn't even stop the cries. It only made them louder in my ears. I shouted, "Stop crying, for Christ's sake, let me sleep." With that I heard a noise behind. I was wondering what it was, who it was. I turned to see a dark figure. I asked in fear, "Hello, who's there?" I then saw my wife's psychologist standing right in front of me. I asked, "What are you doing here?" The psychologist said, "This is the only way to get ye back together, as in really united." I stared in bewilderment. The psychologist picked up my shovel and banged me in the head, and I fell into the grave. It was when he covered me in dirt, was when my wife finally stopped crying.